I'm back. Okay. Let me go ahead. Start right here again. Historically, white working people have preferred to be messed over by our own ruling class and maintain our whiteness than to stand in solidarity with African and oppressed people. The world is changing today as the U.S. and Europe are losing their military, economic, political, and cultural hegemony over everybody else. The growing resistance of African, Arab, and other peoples are opening the eyes of many of us who want to see a positive future. The indirect rule in the form of neocolonialism keeps imperialist plunder and colonial subjugation intact. The mainstream media talks about the corruption of African political leaders in Africa and in the U.S., but all the African leaders with the interest of the masses of the people at heart were assassinated or overthrown. Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, and others in Africa, and Malcolm X and Fred Hampton, among others inside the U.S., were ousted or murdered by U.S. government agencies. The current heads of state in Africa and African elected officials in the U.S. are doing just what the U.S. government wants them to do: carry out the will of imperialism with impunity. Okay? Carry out the will of colonialism without impunity. From Mobutu Mandela, white power in blackface has degraded the conditions for African people in the past 40 years and carried out atrocities that would cause rebellions if the leaders were white. In the U.S., the election of Barack Obama is a perfect example of neocolonialism. Having transferred billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to Wall Street bankers and continued the brutal war policies of George Bush, Obama has served to attack African men and brushed off all of the urgent conditions facing African people in the U.S. today. The African liberation movement is exposing the reality of neocolonialism, and today Africans oppressed people are waking up to the reality that white power in blackface must also be defeated. The African Socialist International is organizing African people around the world to unite and liberate Africa and all its resources under the leadership of African workers. And just so y'all know, it's got nothing to do with me. And it's healthy to understand this while understanding that you are a descendant of a slave, and not to disrespect your DOS. This is not disrespecting your DOS solidarity. So I think that's real important, because this is specific politics. When they get over here, our specific need over here is DOS, but our international thought has to be this. This just has to be. It has to line up with this, in my opinion. In my humble opinion, let me finish. The African Socialist International is organizing African people around the world to unite and liberate Africa and all its resources under the leadership of African workers. An organized anti-colonial socialist resistance movement of African people is growing on the continent of Africa. And y'all see it. I know you have. Y'all heard about them getting ran out of there. And, okay. In the U.S. and elsewhere, it is a revolutionary movement. And why should Africa have vast natural resources, yet millions of African people are starving, living without homes, democratic rights, public schools, clean water, plumbing, or electrical grid due to the ongoing colonial plunder facilitated by neocolonial leaders? Why should diamond oil, BOEX, and other foreign mining corporations make millions and billions of dollars on Africa's resources and the people have nothing? It doesn't make any sense that the benefits of Africa's resources, land, and labor are enjoyed by the white world at the expense of African people. The violence it takes to impose such an unjust system on the colonialized is not sustainable. It's just not. African people are one nation. The continent of Africa will be one country, and the false borders imposed by colonial powers to facilitate plunder will be destroyed. This is the unstoppable motion of history, the power of the people, and it is only the power of that is just. And an African proverb says, truth pressed to the earth will rise. Remember that. Truth pressed to the earth will rise. So it's going to come to a head. I just think Donald Trump is going to take us there in a handbasket. Anyway, reparations are due to African people. This is what y'all can't deal with. This is what's making you jump out the windows, jump off the buildings. A lot of y'all sit back bragging about your homes and what you just purchased and this, that, and the other, and this, that, and the other. But you're going to have to understand that reparations and retribution, in my opinion, are due to the African people. The African People Solidarity Committee is, that was my word, not theirs, when I said retribution. Let me make sure I clarify that. Reparations are due for African people. The African People Solidarity Committee is a revolutionary, anti-imperialistic organization under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. It would be the ultimate hypocrisy for us to support African liberation while continuing to sit on the stolen resources of African people. The African People's Socialist Party raises the reparations demand and has made it a household word based on the understanding that the wealth of America is built on the backs of the African people. In 1982, the APSP held the first World Tribunal on Reparations for the African people. Based on international law, the tribunal found that the African people are owed $4.1 trillion for stolen labor in the U.S. alone. That does not include the amount of profit from the 400-year trade in African people and all it spent off industrial or wealth garnered by the cotton, rum, or tobacco industry, or from the stolen African labor in Brazil, Guyana, Jamaica, and elsewhere. That does not include the ravages and genocide of direct colonialism, where in Namibia, for example, the 90% of the Mama and Herero people were annihilated. It doesn't include the physical and psychological effects of the centuries of torture and terror, beatings, whippings, lynching, mass imprisonment, inflicted on the African people through kidnapping, dislocations, forced labor, lynchings, mutations. It does not include the jobs and wealth created through the very lucrative present-day prison industry, fueled by the discriminatory colonial laws and targeting massive numbers of African people, young and old, women, men, and children. America was really built for white people, wasn't it? But you got everybody over here. Should have kept it white. Because this got to go. And let me just finish. Anyway, the African People Solidarity Committee has built a fundraising institution such as Uhuru Foods, auctions, and donor campaigns to fund the work of the African People's Socialist Party as it builds the movement to liberate African and African people everywhere. We consider this our responsibility and the responsibility of all conscious white people who organize that participation of white people in building a just world requires the righting of historical wrongs, and that the active return of stolen land and resources be placed back to their rightful owners. Did y'all hear that last part? I think I stumbled a little bit, so let me go ahead and repeat that. Damn. Let me repeat that. It doesn't include physical and psychological effects of centuries of torture and terror inflicted on African people through kidnappings, dislocations, forced labor, lynchings, mutilation, beatings, whippings, and mass imprisonment. It does not include the jobs and wealth created through the very lucrative present-day prison system fueled by discriminatory colonial laws targeting mass numbers of African people, young and old, women, men, and children. The African People's Solidarity Committee has built fundraising institutions such as Uhuru Foods, actions and donor campaigns to fund the work of African People's Socialist Party as it builds the movement to liberate Africa and African people everywhere. We consider this our responsibility and the responsibility of all conscious white people who recognize that participation of white people in the building of a just world requires righting of the historical wrongs and the active return of the stolen land and resources to their rightful owners. Wow. Thank you for sending me the platform of the organization that you belong to, Rebecca, African People's Solidarity Committee. I always tell white people when they ask me what can they do, you know, what can they join, I always say it's just better that, you know, you talk to your own people. You don't need to try to join the Panther Party or try to join anything that, you know, that waters down that. You need to go directly to the people that you have in your families that are wreaking havoc on us. And most of y'all, once you get your family members to see what has happened on the planet, then we can do what we need to do to start eliminating that elite group that don't give a damn about none of us, and keep classism and colonialism and all this schisms and schisms. It keeps it alive. So, with that being said, I wish y'all would leave y'all comments below. Let me know if you've heard of the African People's Solidarity Committee. What do you think about a white organization that champions for reparations and colonialism, and acknowledges the colonialism and tries to work to eliminate those things? What do y'all think about that? Please leave me your comments below. Please. I will try to pump another video out. And with that being said, if you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and share. Please. And I'll see you next time. Right here in the mental house. Bye-bye. Thanks, Rebecca.